please. Hello.
Ready? Go. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the draft annual plan today on behalf of Business Canterbury, but also obviously on behalf of our 2,800 members and the wider business community that we do represent. As many of you know, Business Canterbury has been the home and voice of Canterbury business since 1859, so over 165 years, and we are the largest business support organisation in the South Island. Our members represent the backbone of Canterbury's economy, from small retailers to large manufacturers, from hospitality businesses to tech innovators, all contributing to our region's economic growth and also our community wellbeing. Recent surveys of our membership show that Canterbury businesses remain more confident about their prospects here than for the wider New Zealand economy. In fact, 86% of Canterbury businesses believe Canterbury is heading in the right direction, compared to just 78% for New Zealand as a whole. This speaks volumes about our region's resilience and also our potential. However, that confidence is tempered by real challenges that businesses face daily. And today I'd like to just highlight several comments from our written submission on the annual draft plan, which I think are contributors to those challenges that businesses face, causing them to be hesitant about growth right now. So firstly, regarding rates and the fiscal responsibility, businesses continue to shoulder a disproportionate burden of the city's rates. This differential is difficult to justify, particularly when businesses are questioning the value they receive in return. If businesses are expected to contribute more, their voices must be considered accordingly in council decision making. As a not-for-profit ourselves, we understand the challenges of balancing service delivery with fiscal constraints. However, we urge the council to make more practical approaches to managing their costs. We talked about this in our LTP submission last year, and it's worth repeating again. Nobody will tell you to cut services. And while I do think that there are some tough decisions to be made about what the council should and shouldn't be delivering, there must be efficiencies to be made and costs available to be trimmed without having to cut services. Businesses have had to make incredibly tough decisions over the last 5 years, and I think some of the frustration that comes through from them when we hear that from businesses about the council, it's because there appears to be no big decisions being made about financial sustainability in the short term. And by sustainability, I mean for the ratepayers. While I'm here, it's also worth talking about red tape. Compliance costs remain a significant barrier to business growth and can cause lost opportunities to invest in our city and create jobs off the back of where we are as a city right now, which is of course, as the best city in New Zealand with a great story to tell. The consenting process in particular needs improvement. Business owners have shared frustrating examples with you in previous sessions. These disproportionate and costly processes combined with delays actively hinder business development and economic growth. Every day a business waits for a consent is a day of lost productivity and revenue, which ultimately impacts employment and economic contributions to our city. In our recent Canterbury Business Survey, when asked how councils engage with them on decision making, nearly half of the businesses rated this engagement as average, with 39% saying it was poor and only 14% saying it was well done. There is clearly room for improvement in how council works with the business community on decisions that affect them. We need to build trust through transparency and genuine consultation. Businesses may not always agree with decisions, but what they value most is consistency and certainty in the regulatory environment. This allows them to plan investments and operations with confidence. Our businesses aren't asking for lower standards, they simply want efficient, predictable processes that allow them to plan and execute their growth strategies without unnecessary delays or costs. I know some of this is because of the legal requirements you are faced with, but share those solutions with us and we will go into bat for the council with central government. We want you to be able to make progress here also. Regarding the Climate Resilience Fund, while we support this initiative in principle, we do emphasise that priority should be given to protecting economically critical infrastructure, particularly the Port of Lyttelton, which is essential to our region's ongoing and future growth. We're concerned about the fund's governance structure. Having it controlled solely by elected members risks short-term political thinking overtaking long-term outcomes. We recommend incorporating independent expertise to ensure decisions remain focused on long-term resilience priorities beyond election cycles. Finally, infrastructure development is critical to Canterbury's future growth. In our survey last year, 40% of businesses rank economic development as their top priority for councils, higher than any other council function. A significant part of this is ensuring that we have the right infrastructure needed to support business growth. Canterbury has seen the highest level of internal migration for the second year running. We're also attracting a significant number of overseas travellers and migrants who are choosing Canterbury as their place to live, to work and to invest. This presents tremendous opportunities, but only if we have the infrastructure to support that growth. Finally, we do applaud the Council's consideration of divesting assets that are no longer fit for purpose. We encourage you to move swiftly on this initiative and to apply the same appetite to consider Council assets in the future. This approach can free up capital for core services while reducing ongoing maintenance costs. In conclusion, Christchurch has tremendous potential. You know, I'm one of the biggest advocates from a private sector perspective in regards to that. And our businesses consistently tell us that they choose to operate here because they believe in our city's future. But they need a council that will understand both their challenges and act as an enabler rather than as a handbrake, which is what they often see the council as. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Yep, no problem. Sarah, then Jake, please.
Thanks so much for that, Leanne. When it comes to financial sustainability long-term for the city, the medium to long-term, not the short-term sugar hits, one of our proposals is to increase our rating for renewals. So it does put a little bit extra on in the first year and then subsequent years, but it means that overall we pay half the amount for our renewals. Mm-hmm. So if we borrow for it, we pay twice as much overall in time. Are you in favour of that?
Yes, I am, but I mean it's a bit of a one-sided question, and so the point that we're making is we want to make sure, as the private sector does, that they look at all levers that they have available to them, in terms of reducing costs, looking at efficiency gains, and the other levers that you may have available to you. So, in principle, yes. Yeah. But with that context.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You do need to make sure it's done well, but it's a how, when you eventually do pay for it, how does that get done? And can you pay for it cheaper, if you like? Yeah.
And look, there is no doubt that, businesses want the council to invest in the right infrastructure. Yeah. They want to do that in the right way, but at the same time, making sure that they do so really efficiently, and they're looking at all of the levers that they've got available to them.
The other choice we come up with almost every year, and we always take the short-term option, is when we have a little bit of a surplus, we have a choice between lowering rates just for the next year or paying down debt, which saves us more in the long term for ratepayers and businesses. Which one of those do you prefer? I know.
Again, I don't envy the positions that you're in. These are really hard balancing acts that you need to take into account. But I do think you need to take into account the current environment that businesses and general ratepayers are operating within, and find the right balance there. And it might be a combination of both.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Leanne. You referred to asset sales or property asset sales in your submission, and just asset sales in your verbal submission. Yep. Are you happy if we looked at more than just land sales, at the big CCOs?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always maintained our position on assets, and I'm going to avoid the term asset sales. This is actually about having a mature, robust conversation around what is the right ownership model for the council assets. There may very well be some discussions around disposing of assets. Sure. There may be some discussions around bringing in strategic partners, which will mean that actually in the long term the council may get a stronger dividend by bringing in investment. We know that many of those assets need a significant capital injection to ensure that they are fit for purpose for a growing economy, and I worry that we are not looking at that broadly enough.
So have the discussion is the
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
The comments around the Central City shuttle, I thought that was quite good, about just let's get a bus or shuttle, whatever, and just do it. So, yeah, it would be cool if we can look at something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example where it feels a little bit like that's been over-engineered and over-complicated. Why do you need to spend $200,000 on running a trial when just run the trial and see what the outcomes are? In business, we work on just in time. We, often will look at minimal viable products. We have to be agile, and I think that's what we're looking for from the council in some of those decisions. Showing bold leadership, and I do appreciate that, the spotlight is on every decision that you make. But actually, what we're also after is actually more agility, more bold leadership. And sometimes that will mean that you're not going to get everything right. And we will back you on that if there is, I guess, a process that you go through by keeping it simple and just not spending that sort of money for a trial when simply you don't, put staff members on buses for a month. And, ask people questions. It's not going to cost you $200,000. So, yeah, just one example of something that really stuck out to us as being a bit bonkers, to be fair.
Okay. And Yanni, please.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your submissions. Thank you for taking the time. I was keen because you often talk about the idea that we should look more at selling off the assets. I was wondering if you look at the assets that we have sold, like Red Bass, and looked at the impact that has had on effectively possibly costing us more as a city for public transport, and the benefits going to, the profits going overseas rather than being retained locally. So have you done any work around looking at where you have asked us to look at selling off assets, and where we've sold off assets, what the impact has been from a affordability point of view?
Yanni, just to be really clear, as I said before, so our position is not to encourage the council to sell off assets. Our position is to encourage the council to have a mature, robust debate around asset ownership and whether or not bringing in strategic partners will actually provide a better dividend for the council. So look, it's not our job. That's a job of the council, and I would suggest potentially your economic development agency to do that cost-benefit analysis. I think there will be opportunities for you to look at different parts of your asset ownership and work out what makes sense for you to retain ownership of or retain a majority shareholding of. And that has to be in line with your wider annual plan, and it has to be in line with what you consider and what your ratepayers consider to be core business services that should be run by the council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very good. Thanks for coming in. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, Sophie and Mike, please.